Hi, I'm here today with Peter Johnson, Dr. Peter Johnson, but I'll let Peter explain why he's here. Thanks for joining us today. This is another one of Monash Matters, and people matter. Real people, they matter, not just in my electorate, but right across Australia and the world. Peter, tell me why you're here today in my office, and tell me a bit of background as you got to this place.
Okay, yeah, thanks Russell for the invitation. I was in general practice for about 51 years until September in 2021. So 28 months ago, when I resigned from the practice because they were going to give an experimental drug to 12 to 15-year-olds, which violated my conscience, Hippocratic oath, Nuremberg Code, you name it.
And you're worried about the human rights of the young people too?
Particularly the human rights. The young people, particularly 12 to 15-year-olds who didn't really have a say in it. If anxious parents can bring them in to have a jab, they get that, and this could have affected their lives from there on, and they don't even have a say in it. Besides that, I was aware of the drug company issues for a long time, and the number of court cases they've had for fraud and the second.
You must have been very unusual in that though for a doctor.
It probably was helped because it goes back about 40 years after my wife developed an illness that was not curable, and it started me on a search for alternative to conventional medicine. So I studied Chinese medicine, Eastern techniques, psychotherapies, quite a lot. In fact, I've written a book on holistic medicine. So I was aware, even at a conference I can remember going to in Toowoomba back in 1981, where in the early days of Chinese medicine, they only opened up to China in the early 70s, and this would have been in 81. And some of the teams that went there, and a delegation from China, and all of these people were giving their different views, homeopathy, and one thing they seemed to have in common was they felt the dark sort of shadow on healthcare was pharmaceutical companies, big pharmaceutical companies, whose interest was not necessarily putting the patient first. So I was a little bit more alert than most, and I certainly was aware that even the CDC in America was describing the COVID vaccines as a new form of vaccine that teaches the body to make the antibodies.
But as a doctor, you would have been normally very honest with your patients if they asked you about.
Oh, absolutely. It's just I did. And
so how did you run into trouble with the authorities?
Yeah, well, it was funny because I was literally only a couple of days away from retirement, and I suddenly get this letter accusing me of giving COVID misinformation and undermining.
What had you done?
Undermining the national vaccine strategy. Well, I'd seen a 39-year-old woman about a month earlier, and she'd come in to have her. Came in to get a certificate to allow her to have an AstraZeneca shot because they were saving that for the over 60s. But while I was writing that out for her, I asked why not have the Pfizer, and she gave me the impression she didn't really want to have either. So I asked if she'd like my opinion, and I gave it. She said okay, that she seemed happy with it, but obviously her boyfriend wasn't, and he dogged me into the medical board and AHPRA, and hence I got this message to respond. And so I rang my medical defence, assuming that they would, since it was the normal way, I've been practising for 50 years, that you put the patient's need position first. Only to be surprised to be told that no, that they won't pass. We can't defend you unless you do give a grovelling apology and promise in future only to tell the patients that the vaccines, COVID vaccines, are safe and effective. I thought, oh, come on. So it really stunned me. I've got to say that I got the similar when I did ring AHPRA, and there was a very pleasant chap on the phone, but he said the same thing. Oh, no, they get upset if you say anything against vaccines. If I were you, I wouldn't double down on what you're planning to do. So what I did was double down and wrote a response to everything they said, which was, and she had a very good memory for what I told her, and that's why that letter. I approached the whole thing, the ivermectin, the danger of a vaccine that we don't even know how to turn it off. It's so poorly researched that you're giving a gene-altering drug that is going into the cell and teaching the cell how to make a spike protein or what's called an antibody without any idea of how to turn it off. And as far as we know, these are still being produced 6 months after people got them. And
you're not vaccinated? You were never vaccinated?
No, I was never vaccinated. No. Nor my partner. So we held the line on that one.
Tell me about ivermectin. Why was that taken off the market?
Well, I think the reason why it was taken off the market was that the authorities, the FDA and the CDC in the States, you couldn't use an experimental vaccine as an emergency use authorisation if there were cures for that condition still around. And I'm sure that's why they blocked it, because it was a brilliant drug. I mean, I think it's 3.7 billion people in Africa. It's mainly used for tropical diseases, the elephantiasis or filariasis, as we call it, and river blindness. And these are really, devastating diseases in third world countries. And ivermectin has been used for 40 years with great success, costs very little. They don't even have to go to a doctor to get it. And so naturally enough, it was being used as against COVID too, with success. And there were a whole lot of trials that have already been done. Because as soon as this became aware that COVID was a new virus was around, doctors are looking for what they can use. And the quickest and easiest is to use drugs already available and we know are safe. And that's why people like Pierre Corey and Peter McCullough and these people went straight into those. And of course that group of doctors, they set up quite early in the time of lockdowns or against lockdowns. And they said, if you're going to lock down, just lock down the people that are vulnerable, like the elderly, and let everybody else, let the germ spread like it does and develop natural resistance.
So, but do you think the Royal Commission that's been proposed will be a game changer?
Well, it's got the potential to be a game changer, which the current one that Albo's setting up won't do anything. I wouldn't think that'll be a whitewash, or at least that's the way we all see it. Most of the doctors that I'm speaking of, because you've got to include the premiers. There's a lot.
How many doctors of you are there?
About 150 now.
That's a lot of doctors.
It's a lot, but it's small compared to the overall number of doctors in the country.
No, but if you've got 150 doctors that are speaking in the same manner as you are about the safety and effectiveness of the vaccines,
yes,
and the important use of, for instance, ivermectin, which I think Craig Kelly was going to be thrown out of the Parliament for promoting ivermectin and the other drug. Yeah. And I think Trump was vilified.
Well, no, his one was hydroxychloroquine, but that was also effective, and it was shown to be very effective in Egypt when it was used initially there too, because a lot of these African countries are using it all the time. And I might add, one of the cunning tricks that the shall we say the authorities used to try and show that ivermectin didn't work was to conduct a trial in Africa using So the placebo group was meant to be having no ivermectin, and the other group have ivermectin, and compared the differences, and the differences weren't much. But they overlooked the fact that most of them, people, even in the placebo group, are on ivermectin anyway because of their preventing for river blindness or filariasis. So it stands to reason it wouldn't give you a significant result. But there are a heck of a lot of other trials that did show quite clear benefit from ivermectin.
I took it myself.
I
took it myself and announced it to the Parliament.
Yeah, good on
I've
you.
had ivermectin. I've had COVID. I took ivermectin for a 5-day period, I think whatever it was I was instructed to do.
Yeah.
And it was over in 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, right. It took me a bit longer, but I'm probably a bit older. But I got the Delta strain in December 2021 and took the ivermectin and got through all right. And I haven't had any since, so I haven't had any of the Omicrons, and none of those, no colds, no nothing since then. So I still trust my natural immunity.
Yeah.
And I haven't exactly been, quietly staying at home.
So 12 to 17-year-olds, their immunity would be A1, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And even in America, there were 300 children were said to die of COVID, and when they actually looked through them, there was only one they had any question about that didn't have very serious pre-existing conditions. So children just don't die of COVID. And
the head of the Children's Hospital said that. She said, we've only had one patient in Europe, but at the same time, they're saying get babies inoculated for COVID.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's...
I can't say it's ridiculous because I'm not a doctor. You are a doctor.
Yeah, well, I'll say it's ridiculous.
And there's 150 more of you that think the same way, and they're the only ones that are connected to you.
Yeah.
There are others.
Yeah, and I think that also it's criminal behaviour to be giving an experimental gene-altering drug to people who have nothing to fear from the virus, which is little more than a flu anyway.
Have you had a lot of criticism for your position?
Look, this is the amazing thing. No one wants to actually debate. So I don't get much blowback. I got a huge amount. When I first came out and I set my response into AHPRA, the medical board and the College of GPs and the FDA, I got no response from any of them except from the college to say that thank you for sharing, but we'll take our advice from official channels. So I got nothing from that except to AHPRA eventually reluctantly accept my resignation about 6 weeks after I sent the letter in, because I said at the bottom of the letter, look, I'll save you time. I'm from suspending me. I'm quitting anyway. But when that, after that, that sort of went around the internet a bit, and then got kind of not a lot of interviews over the late in 2021 and early 2022 on the alternative media. And I was surprised actually, because when I came out, I didn't know there were many. It seemed so against the tide. I didn't know there were many people on side, except that I was starting to get letters coming in, and I was saying, God, I have to dummies standing up.
Just one more thing before we finish, and I want people to get this message. There were 350 people in a report the other day that were hospitalised with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if 98% of the people are vaccinated, why isn't the question being asked, safe and effective?
Well, at one stage when we were meant to be 95% immunised, we had pretty much 10 million cases at the height of that, the earlier one last year, I think in the year before, 2022, when we had the really big Omicron thing. It was something like about 10 million cases, and yet we're meant to be 95% vaccinated.
Reports on television last night that there's a new strain coming through.
Yeah.
From what the people are dealing, I'm not a doctor, a specialist, I don't know anything, I can only listen to people.
Yeah.
All I do is listen. And when I listen, I hear things like people are not taking up the boosters in Australia, like the pennies dropped. It's only 5% of people under 75 that have taken the booster.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to verify
and they're probably mandated.
And they're probably mandated.
Yeah.
And a pregnant nurse lost her job along with a whole lot of other nurses in Queensland the other day because she wouldn't take the vaccination.
I mean, that itself is criminal. I mean, when I was a medical student when thalidomide was coming out, and I had one patient with a victim of thalidomide. She just had like flippers up here for arms. Gorgeous person and a wonderfully caring mother. And I suppose other patients for 20 years. But it was standard at that time that you do not give any drug in pregnancy. And particularly in the first 3 months of pregnancy, you do not give any drugs, especially ones that are new. I mean, I probably gave Panadol or aspirin, I think, over to early pregnancy for pains, but nothing else basically. Penicillin. But otherwise, look, any new drug you just don't give, and let alone new vaccines, and genetic ones as well. I mean, it just compounded the whole, to me, criminal activity.
We're going to pause there and thank you for joining us today. Peter has a very good story to tell. And what I think we might do is thank you for being with us today and thank Peter for coming along. I'm going to talk to Peter again about another issue that I'd like to raise with him. Thanks for being with us.